Topping Talks. $105 hours a week can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production, and today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Talks is also on Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all your favorite platforms. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, we're still giving away a free Flamethrower with every IT purchase. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the Flamethrower button to learn more. Now, without further ado, today I'm proud to say I'm interviewing Joshua Farrow, who is an IT security engineer at Ryan LLC. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on here, Nick. I just wanted to let you know I love working at Ryan, but the views that I say here are representative of me, not the company. So I figured I'd just put that out there.
Sounds good. Well, winding back the clock a couple of years, how did you first get into IT?
So it's probably around 2010 or 11. I was in college, and my wife and I were about to get married, and I ended up getting into as a school worker, college worker at Hardin Simmons, where I was at school. So I did IT for the nursing academy that they had there, which I believe is still there, maybe on its last. I can't remember if it's still there, but it was called Patty Hanks Nursing School. So, and I did that with them for a while. That was my first paid gig, if you want to call it that. And then I moved over to another company right after that.
That's pretty cool. What kind of IT stuff were you doing in that role?
It was very much help desk. I was the main computer assistant or computer tech guy at this nursing school. And so I was the gopher for a lot of stuff.
Everything from laptops to the medical machines and connectivity, everything in between?
No medical machines on that regard. There's another guy that did the tech lab for that. But anything that was just administrative IT was myself.
What was the biggest curveball you had in that role, or biggest lesson learned from that experience?
I don't think we had a ton. I didn't get thrown a ton of challenges in that one. I think the only thing that was like a crazy story was there was one of the students had I think she had epilepsy, and so she had a seizure at one point, and It was kind of crazy because none of the other nurses, they were like new students, and they didn't really do anything. And so I just kind of ran over there, and we held her head back and stuff. And I just thought it was ironic that she's having this here, and none of the nursing students in her group right there were like really doing anything. They're just like, I don't know what to do. You know?
My gosh, the tech guy did it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I hope that y'all don't do that later. So,
right.
but they were new, so I'm sure that I think they were freshmen. It was the first week or so of school, so I don't think that they were ready for anything like that at the moment.
There you go. And what was your first full-time IT role out of college?
That would have been with Abilene Regional Medical Center in Abilene. It's not there anymore, but that was my actual first full-time. I think I was system analyst or system administrator. I can't really remember what the title was, but that was my first time actually doing hands-on cables and a lot of like punch-down stuff and various networking pieces. We didn't do a lot because corporate maintained a lot of that. Mm-hmm. So it was still very much an active help desk role, but there was still a lot that I learned from that.
What's the biggest lesson learned there, and how do you like it? It sounds like you pretty much kind of like the medical industry.
I did enjoy. Every place I've been, I've really enjoyed the various areas that I've been in. So the medical industry it's just an interesting place to work as it relates to IT. I learned a lot of user-facing customer service in that regard. Because being IT, it's always the internal people that are our customers, and so I learned a lot of just dealing with attitudes, especially as it relates to doctors or certain high pressure departments and their IT work, and just trying to navigate that without just constantly getting pissed off.
Okay.
I see that happen a lot in IT. People just getting ticked off with different departments or different VIPs and stuff. And it's like they're going to be what they're going to be. So best way to handle it is with kindness a lot of the time.
Absolutely. I mean, maintain your composure is half the battle of customer service jobs. Everyone should have that role at least once in their life.
I've maintained that as well. That I think that anyone getting into the IT, and I don't try to gatekeep, but that's one of the things that has been pivotal in my learning, is in the help desk role. And I don't think anyone should stay there necessarily, but at least a year's worth of just being in the trenches on that.
Oh yeah, and you'll quickly find Google as your friend.
Yeah, you will.
Or asking them if they reset their PC.
And dealing with just irritating requests, but also irritating people, and understanding how to run and be fluid with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Then where do you go after the hospital?
So after the hospital, I went over to the base, Dice Air Force Base. I'm not military. I was a contractor with them. It's for a company called Textron. A lot of people heard Textron.
Oh yeah.
It was a parent company. The company I was contracted under was True Simulation. It was a company that I think it was either a subsidiary or a company they purchased. I can't really remember what the whole story was there, but it was their first run in the simulation era, or simulation industry with regard to, I believe, military. I think Textron already has a branch that does like commercial simulation, because I know True was dealing with a lot of different commercial simulation as well. And, but I don't know, I never really dug in a whole lot on that one.
That's pretty cool. How do you find that job?
So when I worked at Hardin Simmons, I got to be good friends with the main campus, the Hardin Simmons IT guys. And they were doing a refresh on the machine. So Patty Hanks was kind of it was a conglomerate between a few schools, but Hardin Simmons maintained their IT. So all the workstations were Hardin Simmons workstations. And when they did a refresh, those were technically depreciated at that point. And so they're not going to sell them or anything. They didn't do an auction. There's some schools like ACU will do an auction for that, but since Hardin Simmons keeps them for a decent amount of time, they just tell the staff and faculty, if you want one, you can have one.
Nice.
So I'd taken one home in that process. I was helping do the refresh, and they said, yeah, take a few. So I took one home, and when I was on call at the hospital, that was my on-call machine, because they didn't give us like a laptop or anything. And so one day the fan, I think it was like the power supply fan or something like that, died on it. It was like a Dell, so you'd have to go, you'd usually have to swap it out for another Dell part. And so I called them up, said, hey, I know I haven't been working there, but do y'all have a piece? And they said, oh yeah, come up here, we'll give it to you. So I did, and then when I was there, I was still working at the hospital. I was about 9 months into the hospital, 10 months. And they said, hey, a guy that we know is looking for a security engineer or security administrator. And we told him that you might be interested. And I don't know why they did that.
Yeah.
Like we weren't like super good friends, but we had a good relationship, as far as a good working relationship. And they were really nice guys. And that kind of led one thing to another, and I ended up getting that job. So that was a cool shift.
Yeah, definitely.
I was very thankful for that shift, because the hospital, we didn't, as much as I got my hands on to stuff, there was a lot of walls that corporate wouldn't allow us to touch the equipment completely. And so there was a lot of that I wasn't able to dive into. And the base, getting hired at True, allowed me to do that.
That's awesome. You work on site, and do you get to see simulation tools, or what was the environment like?
Yeah. So it's a secure building, and the simulators are inside it. And we didn't work on the sims, like the programming and stuff, but there was programmers that were hired on the team as well. They would work with corporate and develop software and new releases and stuff like that to mirror different things that the the flyers, the pilots and the backseaters were needing, and that way they could mimic the plane as best as possible. And so we never worked directly on the simulator. We were starting to get to that point when I was about to leave, but what they were throwing down was RMF at the time, and neither my boss or I especially had not dealt with that before. That was my first actual realm into security. My boss had been working there for, I think, about 10 years or a little bit less. And so he'd already gone through one round of contract, and the contracts lasted about 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a nice, like, and it was very much, if you got on and you just didn't piss anyone off, you could ride that contract for the majority of the time. And so he got on the contract renewal. It was with Rockwell Collins prior, and then they lost it to True Simulation. So I got pulled in on the True Simulation one, and we were tasked with basically implementing a cybersecurity program. My boss was, and I was pulled along, and so a lot of that was him spending time learning the RMF process. Mine was keeping the lights on. Both of us were doing that, but I was able to allow him the cushion to lean into that, while I was just gobbling up knowledge about server administration, network administration, some security, but that would come a little bit later.
Then what was it like in that first role that wasn't help desk, and do you like it a lot more?
It was, looking back on it. So I was a system admin. I remember that specifically. Was their system engineer, I think, is what they called us, and it was very much a junk drawer of jobs. We wore all the hats.
Oh yeah.
Servers broke, you fix it. Networks broke, you fix it. My computers broke, you fix it. So it was help desk to a whole different level. You were the administrator for everything, and there's a lot of stuff I got to learn. A big one that I learned right off the bat was how to do different deployments, setting up deployments within like Pixie Boot and stuff like that, and how to handle a WSUS, and there was a ton of that. And so it was just a a fire hydrant of just knowledge that I was sorting through.
That's pretty cool. So that got over the barriers of the healthcare industry. You got to get your hands on some real stuff in this experience.
Yeah, and you have to get certain clearance, and then you're going on the base, and it was just a really cool. It was probably my most interesting job as it relates to the environment. What
was it like getting security clearance?
I thought it was going to be a lot tougher. It really wasn't. I just had secret, and a lot of times secrets just it can be just a step above like what a news outlet is pushing out. So it's nothing crazy, but it was still, they still treat it very very seriously, and so you still have to provide background information for the past so many years up until a certain point. Like you usually have to provide, I think, like 10 years prior, or up until your 18th birthday. And I could, at that point, I could only, I think it was in 2015, so I was still in my 20s, and so I could only provide I only had to provide like 5 or 6 years worth, and but they still had to check on stuff. We had some friends that one of them is a foreign national, or was born in a different country, and so they kind of honed in on that, and like, what's your relationship to them? And it wasn't even like a crazy, it wasn't even a country that's like a adversarial. Yeah, it was like, I believe it was Japan, but they were very serious about like, who is this person? And that was kind of an awkward conversation, and my friend was very cool about it, but it was his wife, and I had to text him and say, hey, they're asking about this. Can you provide me with some information? And they were very nice about it, and they did, but still, it was just an awkward, they kind of made that a little awkward to have to reach out to random people or friends and ask them for private information in a way.
So is it basically just you giving them a Rolodex the past 10 years, or what information? If are you allowed to talk about?
It's usually, like if it's secret clearance, then you're having to give them a lot of historical information, background information. They're going to run your background anyways, but they kind of want to see if you're going to be honest about that stuff anyways. I never got top secret or anything, but I've had friends that have, and that's a whole different, that's a send out an auditor or an investigator that actually like goes and either calls a person or talks directly to so-and-so about, hey, they said they knew you this time. Could you vouch for that? What was their character? Stuff like that. So as you go up higher, there's like a lot more grueling process. So secret, it seemed like there was a lot, but looking back, it's like, oh, that was pretty easy. So, but another friend of ours was over here on a visa, or I think I can't remember if it was a visa or if he was naturalized or was working towards that. I cannot remember, but his process ended up being pretty lengthy for him just because of that. But ironically, he works at I think he works at either L3 or what's it called? What's over in Fort Worth?
Well, you have the Israeli base, but the U.S. headquarters for Elbit Systems is in Fort Worth.
Who is Lockheed?
Oh, yeah.
It's either Lockheed or L3 that he works for, which I find funny because now I think he has like TS. And so it's just so interesting because like his was such a tough process because he wasn't American born, and but he's a fantastic security guy. He's very much into the DevSecOps portion and does a lot with K8 and Kubernetes and stuff like that. So it's cool. It's cool seeing that. And a lot of the guys I worked with, seeing them do what they're doing now, it's very interesting.
Oh yeah, a lot of you don't realize how much goes into those background checks and to get all those clearances, and how often, how expensive it can be to get them too.
Yeah,
and just getting someone to sponsor you to do that too for a business to pay for it's pretty penny.
Yeah, it's not cheap, and
it's like a Lamborghini cost.
Yeah, and they
literally
they do their deep dives on that stuff, and they it takes about. Like as soon as I stepped in the first day, I was having to fill out paperwork for it because it takes, depending on how much information they have to go through, it can take 1 to 3 months or more. So what sucks is during that time, you're a temp, you're at full employment status, and they don't even say that your employment does depend on you passing that, but they try to hedge their bets and make sure that they pull their background information and stuff like that prior, so that they have a good bet that you're going to pass that stuff. And they'll go to bat for you usually if they need to. But you're temp clearance for the time being, so you can't walk around the building without a escort.
Really?
So you can't even go to the bathroom. Yeah, it's interesting.
Can't even go to the bathroom alone.
Yeah.
I guess they gotta be careful. You might be putting a bug or something. I mean,
yeah, it's more of just an audit. Like a lot of time, it was a small team. I think we're about 50 or 60 people, but they took it very seriously. I commend them for that. Like if you tried to walk around without it, without an escort while you're temp, they'd be like, "Hey, where's your escort?" So I really applaud them for that.
Oh yeah, well nowadays especially, no such thing as too much security. You guys
Right.
always have to be vigilant. Especially for the defense industry, like the largest, most advanced defense contractors on the planet, they're all headquartered in the U.S.
Yeah,
So we got to be especially vigilant.
yeah, and so it was a fun job. It really was. I ended up leaving there after a few. I think it was 5 years. I went through a contract renewal, which was an interesting process, and then
What was that like?
it can be stressful depending on who you are and what your job is. For me, I was specifically told like you do not need to worry about your job. The incoming company once they were called ASI, Aero Simulation Inc. And we were told, hey, they're not downsizing the security team. They are downsizing some of these areas, but you're good. They need you. And we did informal interviews with the team, but they were very much like, yeah, we'll be offering you something to majority of the people. Really? And so you really have to just deal with the hardest part on that is you have to deal with a lot of the politics and administration issues. So like if you had a 401k with this company, the next company, if you're vesting, the next company doesn't necessarily have to honor that. So
Really?
yeah, but ASI chose to, which was nice.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. It looks like kind of the people, for the most part, stay, but you have a different contractor come in to take over the major government contract.
Yes, that's exact. It goes up for bid, and then the government looks at it and decides if they want to keep that company or I think they're technically supposed to put everyone back in the same pool and see if they all pass merit, and they all, like, the person who holds a contract has no guarantee that they'll get the next one.
That's pretty interesting. Interesting that the people don't stick with the company. That's pretty interesting. Kind of reminds me of the Lake City Armory, the ammunition plant.
Okay.
Like that's a very similar situation where like the government owns the plant, but every couple of years they bid it out to a manufacturer or a contractor to manage it. And I'm guessing maybe it's kind of similar where you have a lot of people stay, but you have a different managerial company that'll come in and replace it.
Yeah. So like
that level.
what would happen is, what happens is most of the team stays unless the company coming in wants to, there could be a lot of different reasons. They want to cut costs because they bid a certain, you don't know what the bids are. Yeah. So they may have bid a certain amount, and they usually bid certain FTEs as well.
What's the FTE for the folks at home?
Full-time employment or full-time employees. So they'll bid certain positions per department. Like, we can get this. They're essentially telling the government, like any other contractor would, we can get this job done with this much resource or this many resources, and that'll cost you XYZ. And they all bid out that, and the government picks it up. And it's crazy because, I was told like Rockwell Collins did a really good job, but Textron or True came in with a cheaper bid. So the government ended up going with them, and True, for all intents and purposes, was really not a great company in that they were new. They didn't know how to accomplish a lot of those goals, and they really overbid what they could do. And so ASI came in, and they already had a lot of military contracts, and so they were able to say, like, we know what we're doing. And I think that's a big proponent of why they switched it over. They were a solid company. I was with them for a year. It's always funny with the what I learned with the contract renewal, especially in this case, was whenever I was interviewing the next time for a job for a different company, I had to say, like, hey, like, it says 5 years here or 4 years here and 1 year with this. It's the same job, just a different company and a different title. Like I was system admin or system engineer with True, but then I was the network admin for ASI. But I had to tell them, hey, I did cybersecurity. They just did a name change, and it's at the same place I stayed. I didn't move anywhere.
That's a very unique situation on a resume perspective.
Yeah, because it looks like you only stayed with a place for a year.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, that's cumulative.
Yeah,
so
it's literally the same same position, but different company, different logos slapped on the badges on Monday, and
that's exactly
different
what
executives
happened.
coming in on Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, went from there. My boss at the time that was with True, that was over the cybersecurity department that originally hired me. He chose not to do the contract renewal. He went and did some of his own stuff for the time being, and then after a few months, he hit me up and said, "Hey, I got a job at a bank, and I would love for you to come join me. I need a guy." And so I said, "Yeah." I was a little tentative at first because I'd worked at that bank prior in college, and just did not have a good experience, and I was a teller and ended up getting fired for some it was poor management in that regard. And so he knew that, but he's like, "Hey, this is a different position, on your terms in this regard." And so I said, "Okay." And so went over there to become the security, what was it? I think it was security administrator is what it was. He was a security architect, and I think my title was security admin. And so that was the first time I would say I was in a dedicated security role. All the other ones, I was doing everything, security included. This was the first time it was like, I don't touch servers and I don't touch the networking equipment. We just do security. So
is that something you kind of negotiated with him or seeked out because you wanted to do security? You just kind of fall in place and you like it? Or how do you end up at that journey, with that career decision?
When I got hired at the base and it was meant to be helping out with build out the security program and I'm just a fledgling, you start learning more and more and being exposed to a lot of that and I started realizing I really do enjoy the security side of things. I've always been intrigued by hacking and pen testing. We didn't do any of that in those jobs. As I've learned since, that can be very niche for an in-house, but it's very smart to be proactive and teach your people that. That's what that's what the CISO I work for now. That's what he's desiring for our team and puts in training for that. But the others, that wasn't really a priority, and I get it. I mean, because sometimes it's easier to hire an external entity to do those operations. It makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to send people on training, especially if it's not like their full job position.
Oh yeah, that's a whole industry in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it like going to finance in the bank? I'm guessing not so many background checks or not so many security clearances?
Not so many of those, no. That was a different, every industry has its different bend and focus. All of them want to make money, but
right.
some more than others. In the military, in that contract, the money, we didn't deal with the money aspect of that. That was very much the company itself, even the people, even the top leaders at the base, like in our program, they didn't negotiate any of that a lot of the time. They might with employees that came in, but as far as like the bigger picture, no. And once the contract's signed for the amount of time, the money's paid.
So it's all locked in.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which has its ins and outs because it makes it tough to purchase stuff. You have to go through a lot of hoops to purchase stuff to make sure it's in that budget for that year or whatever that they've, because you have a budget that's been calculated per the contract, as opposed to a private business. Mm-hmm. Well, First Financial is publicly owned because they were on the stock market, but still. They're not a government entity, so their budget's very much based on how much revenue they're bringing in, as opposed to kind of a solid.
You're locked in kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Uncle Sam probably isn't too happy to come back asking for more money after they signed on the dotted line kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a very tough. It's a whole hoops item because some of that budget comes out of the contract, and I think sometimes the company itself has to front that money for like different purchases. It's a whole like accounting thing that they have to make sure that they do it correctly.
Sounds like a nightmare. It's probably easier for them to just say no.
Yeah,
the majority of the time.
Anytime, like a lot of stuff, if leadership had said we need this thing, then it was an easy push if the government was on board. And there's different people that were involved from the government side, that were from like the Air Force side, that were able to vouch for different things. So certain things were easy, but other things, like if it was like, hey, we have to redo this whole switch stack, then that was an act of Congress, basically, it felt like. So you had to present why you needed it, and then that had to be approved, and then that approval had to be approved, type of thing. And so it had to go all the way up the chain and usually get signed off on by like the purchasing department of the contractor, and then also the government in some aspect of that.
Sounds like you need like a dictionary length full book of signatures for that to happen.
And it's funny because, a lot of vendors, we'd get vendor calls and it's like, hey man, like I can't promise you anything.
Yeah.
Like I have no idea.
Calling 4 years and the contract's up for renewal. Like it sounds like realistically that's probably how they would get in.
It was very much a, hey, we can talk about it today.
Yeah.
But this is not converting for like a year.
Yeah.
If that, like if we're going to get this project, it's not going to be bought tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's got to be on a project list, and that basically we would take a project list and just like you would do with a lot of other companies, you'd say, here's the budget I want for the year, for next year. And then you'd, hand it over, and then they would go and barter back and forth with, the government and their own people and stuff like that, and come back and usually be like, yeah, you can't do this.
But you can do 1 through 3. Hey, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. Yeah, it's probably one of the most complex situations. There's the technology, procurement, and operation wise.
Yeah, procurement is always, and I've always had. I didn't start dealing with procurement till the base, but since then I've had to deal with procurement, and it's Man, every company has a different system. Some companies it's just like, here's the pin, you just sign the check, and others it's very much like it's got to go through 4 approvals.
Oh yeah, it's like it is fascinating. Every company's different. Like we have a small business we work with, and it's just one of those things where like they don't even have a real budget they put together every year. They just have it's one of those things where if they need IT and the owner understands, they just do it.
They just do it.
Yeah, they just sign off on it.
And then when I got to the bank, we'd make a yearly budget and say like, this is what we want, and then it was kind of the same, similar, like, okay, we approve this is this, but not this. But then if they approved those, you would think that, okay, going into the next year, because that's the approved budget for the next year, I can go ahead and buy those things when the time is right. But then you had to get a second approval.
What? Oh,
and that was always really frustrating because it was like,
it's already
I thought we already did this thing.
You stamped it once.
Yeah.
You said it was important once, just didn't have the budget. Why not again?
Yeah, it was always like, then what was that process? Right. So I don't know. I haven't dealt with that again.
Nice.
Since then, like Ryan, as far as I know, whenever they approve a budget, it can be subject to change.
Oh, yeah.
But I believe at the very least, they try to make sure that everything's lined out now. Mm-hmm. So going forward, you stick to that, we're good.
Exactly.
As far as I've seen. But I don't deal with much of the procurement in this role, which I'm fine with.
What was your favorite job? And before going to Ryan, what was your favorite job working in the financial industry?
Being the security architect. So my boss eventually moved over to the GRC side. That's government risk and compliance. Mm-hmm. So the policymakers and the auditors, auditing side of security. He moved over to there, and they promoted me up to the security architect. And so that was the first time I got to be a manager.
Nice.
And I ended up having 2 people underneath me. And that's been a very rewarding thing. Management in itself, dealing with a lot of the higher politics of stuff and general bullcrap at times is annoying.
Oh yeah.
But I very much enjoy mentoring and building teams out. It's one of it's one of those things that I realized is something that I'm good at, and it's a kind of a passion of mine that I realized in the process of it. And a lot of that's just because I like seeing people do well and like to not necessarily micromanage them. I like to allow them to be autonomous, but also knowing that you got to get from step A or from point A to point G before maybe they're fully autonomous or fully able to walk on their own, and then assisting in like kind of phases, right. Especially depending on the type of employee that it is. If it's someone that's new to the industry, there's a lot more hand holding. And if they've been in the industry, it's kind of more of determining what kind of worker they are. There's that weird balance of trying to make sure they know what they're doing, but also letting them do their own thing to learn in the way that they're supposed to, or that makes the most sense to them. But also, are they a good employee?
Yeah.
Right. There's always that back and forth that someone can be great at learning and doing their job, but they're a terrible employee. And thankfully, I haven't dealt with like anyone underneath me so far that I've hired. I haven't dealt with that, which was really awesome. And I still keep very much in contact with them. So that was probably my favorite job. Unfortunately, it's the one that led to burnout, but a lot of that was from the environment and the.
Is it just? I'm guessing financial. I mean, one of the things I first think about with banks is a lot of cybersecurity, a lot of malicious hackers going after you guys. Just burnout of all the threats, or just too many hours, or what was that like?
Too many hours, not enough resources, too many projects, not enough project management, leadership not really having vision for what they wanted, just kind of off the cuff directions, dealing with middle managers that were older. And so they thought they needed to like provide dad advice or tell you how things were, but wouldn't listen to your input type of thing. So it was a lot of that, nice people. But it very much, we'd have a full plate and saying like, hey, we got to back something off on this. I need y'all to prioritize what this is. Yeah. And a lot of times it wouldn't be it would be like, hey, well, everyone's working a whole lot of hours. And it's like, that's a problem. You know, like guys, if everyone's on fire and someone's saying, pour some water on me, and you say, well, we're all kind of on fire, then we need to figure out, why are we all on fire? Right? This is painful. It hurts. It's leading to mental fatigue, physical fatigue, spiritual fatigue, whatever you want to put in. And it's not helping anybody. We're not productive in this state. And so,
and then is it kind of cliche to say, but I'm guessing they also had an issue with every priority being a top priority.
Every guy, every person that came into that hospital, you know, proverbial hospital, needed life-saving work.
Oh yeah.
So triage wasn't a thing, or you'd be working on one thing that you were told to work on, and then a month or two later asked, where are you at on this other thing that had been shelved?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I shelved it because you told me not to work on it.
Yeah. You said this other thing was top priority. Yeah, and it's astonishing how you could, you know, colleges, some of them are exceptional. I mean, you could have the smartest person on the planet, but without the interpersonal skills, they're unemployable in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And like so few people don't realize how important that is. And just simple phrasing of emails, it can be offensive if you don't realize it. Like I grew up in the Midwest, so I was overly formal when I first moved to Texas.
Okay.
And I didn't realize this when I first had to call my email sent out. People thought I was being like a passive aggressive a-hole. I'm like, oh no, that's how I talk. Like I thought that was respectful, but come down here is a whole culture shock. You had to kind of relearn a couple things, and you know, once I did that, my repetition changed appropriately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is shocking to see just the way you phrase emails, where you know, just a couple different phrases how you talk to folks.
Yeah.
Like the biggest weird curveball to me, or just blew my mind. It's like, oh yeah, everyone in Texas calls people by their first name. It's like even their manager. I'm like, I thought my coworkers were messing with me. I'm like, they don't do that. Like, oh no, just call him Callan. My old manager at HP is like, I'll call Mr. McAvell. It's like, oh no, Callan. I'm like, then he told like, you know, manager said, hey, just call him first name. I'm like, okay, it's weird, but I'll do it.
So you were used to like a title,
a
Mr., Mrs., and last name.
Always in the Midwest, and like I wasn't being a smart ass. Like it was just the formal thing to do. Like pretty much, yeah. Like anyone older than you, or just like even a peer. That's usually how it was when I was living up in the Midwest. So it felt so weird for the first couple of weeks just trying to get adjusted to that. Like that, and just the email phrases, just moving a couple things around. But yeah, those interpersonal skills. I mean, if I was in charge of like a college itinerary, like I put such a priority on those just to help people adjust to the company's culture, just kind of, you know, help them guide them in the right direction. Because again, you can be the smartest person on the planet, but if you don't get along with folks, you're not going to go very far in your career. Yeah,
that's exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of times that the communication aspect, because it can be exhausting of trying to kind of chameleon and make sure that you're, I say that like, you know, like I've talked to I have a friend or two that are autistic, and they've said, you know, it can be exhausting having to kind of like mask, you know, and fit into a paradigm or a certain box, but it's necessary, you know, and I get that, you know, ADHD, that's what I have that. And that's a big thing, is masking, not in a lying type of way. It's just more of a, fitting in, trying to not rock the boat, and trying to ensure that you look normal on the outside. And so, thankfully I'm decently extroverted, so that comes a little bit more naturally. But there are some times that it's just like I'm exhausted from talking to people or dealing with people. So
well, that's also the downside of like so much corporate communication these days is like email, Teams chat, Zoom. That was the other one. Slack, and like they're extremely convenient. Like in a fraction of a second, you can contact a partner or a distributor. Very convenient, but it can also be easily misconstrued because it's just text. It can be easy to understand or misrepresent.
That's
So that's one of those things where it's like, it gets lost. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's not as convenient, but making a phone call or video call is it's a lot easier to be. It's less likely to be misunderstood, I think, and misconstrued.
Yeah. It's always funny too, because I'm big about text, and I have a friend that I give him a hard time, and he does me, because he's a phone caller.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, I will like, I'll sometimes hang up on a person, like be like, and with him specifically, I'll be like, why are you calling me? Why aren't you texting me?
Yeah.
He's like, because this is easier, and we'll go back and forth about that. But as much crap as I give him for that, he's not wrong in that. Especially when it comes to like work. Usually with friends, he's like the only one that will call me from a friend's perspective. Everyone else, we usually like Discord, or we'll send video, voice messages, on like Telegram or what's not Signal. Yeah. Yep. But at work, there's definitely some times that someone's like, "Hey, can I call you real quick?" And I'm like, "Ugh." But I think a lot of that's because there's so many times that there's a meeting, that could have been an email.
Yeah, that needs to be a T-shirt. It has to be one by now.
But a lot of times on those smaller interpersonal things, it really is, hey, I just need 10 minutes of your time. And if both of you are respectful of 10 minutes of your time, that issue that would have taken 50 text messages really is resolved in 10 minutes with no misunderstanding.
That's the key. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's going to take more than 2 email responses. Just give them a call. But it is funny, just socially and culturally, like, it's one of those things where I'm at the point where if I get a phone call from someone, I almost instinctively think it's almost bad.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to be either, maybe not perhaps negative, but it's going to be something that's requires more detail and thought than just a simple text. But usually, talking to friends, like, you text like, "Oh yeah, let's meet here, and we'll hang out." Like, you're not really elaborating as much as we used to, like back in the day when.
Yeah.
Back in my day, a text was 10 cents a text. I tell you what.
T9ing it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Oh, that's when you really had to care about texting someone. If you're willing to smash those buttons a million times.
Well, it's one of the big reasons I'm big on remote work, because so the bank. We did it during COVID, and it was phenomenal. We were honestly very productive, and I learned a lot of my habits for work from home. I'll have some of the guys on the team now be like, if you've been like, we always know what you're doing when you're working from home. It's like, well, it's kind of a survival tactic, because when I was at the bank, we were like, we're not giving them a chance to say we weren't working. So we were constantly like, hey, I'm going to the bathroom. Hey, I'm grabbing some coffee. Hey, I'm,
Really?
Yeah, because my boss and I we loved it, and so we were like, this ride ain't gonna last forever here. So we're trying to, his big deal is let's future proof ourselves, and also let's not give them a reason to say you have to come into the office. And so we would make sure that we were very just Johnny on the spot with a lot of those, and looking correct whenever we did video, even though we tried our best to never have to do video. And I learned a lot about like voice meter, because I would, the house we were living at the time, previous owners had put up a little, a decently sized shed in the background, the backyard, because I think they worked on cars. And so I would go out there, but then it would be a nice day, and it had a just a manual garage door on it. And so I would open that up, but then legitimately, like, birds would be chirping, and you could hear them in the mic. And so I had voice meter, so I was gating stuff, and I would have my macros set up on my mouse, and so I just carried that over.
That sounds like paranoid. Yeah, that's what I love about remote work. When you have a job where you can work like there, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. The house that we have now doesn't have like kind of a backyard area, but I love working from home. I do like going to see people from time to time. I very much believe in the the in-person element, not necessarily necessary for everything. But that's where the bank really didn't see eye to eye on that one. And I get there's some positions in the bank that don't require, or that like a teller or loan officer and stuff like that. It just, the First Financial, to their credit, very much about interpersonal with their customers, and they're a big relational bank, and I love that about them. But there was a lot of hey, you guys aren't really allowed to work from home, but we'll let you work from home, but we're going to hold that over you in a way.
Sounds like a threat.
Yeah, it was funny because it was like, hey, we don't allow work from home, like, on the whole, but also let's set up 2 firewalls that control our VPNs. And I'm like, then why do we have a VPN?
What? Yeah.
If we're all in, because the way we were set up with the branches, they're all like over MPLS. So they're not VPNing in.
Yeah.
And so it was like, so it was kind of that back and forth. And that's where Ryan, what I really love about Ryan is they have My Ryan is a thing that I believe Brent Ryan and several others.
And then what is Ryan LLC for the folks who might not be aware?
Oh, yeah. So I say this because this is how I feel about it. I feel like it's the biggest tax firm that you've never heard of. Because I had no idea who they were, but they essentially do tax as a service. And I'm still a year into this, and I'm still learning about this. So if there's anyone from Ryan that's watching this and I butcher some of this, I do apologize. But for the majority of what I've understood is that they work alongside a client, B2B, and they say, we're going to handle your taxes for you. And so they're not a CPA firm. They will help their professionals and team members get a CPA. They will assist in that, and they want that. But they're not a CPA firm. They don't do audits at this moment, I don't believe. I haven't heard that they do it. And so they do tax as a service. And so they say, Nick, we're going to pull up alongside you, and you just let us handle the taxes. So we'll file if you're, let's say you're a landlord, you're a business that has a lot of your real estate business, and so we'll handle all your property taxes for you. So you just give us all they work with the customer, you give us our information, and provide us with the access to log in and file taxes for you, and then that's what they'll do. And they'll what it's founded on is trying to a big thing is trying to remove the tax burden from a lot of people and save them money and by not having to pay taxes that they didn't have to pay in the first place. Was finding major tax savings, and that's where where Brent has really built the business. Is not in the best thing I ever heard in accounting was you should always avoid having to pay taxes that you don't need to pay. Tax, because tax evasion is illegal. Tax avoidance should be your focus.
Precisely.
And that's very much what it feels like the business is set up on. Brent does not like people having to pay more taxes than is necessary. If they could pay no taxes, I think he would be on board, but then we wouldn't have jobs. So, so that's that. And I really like that. I really honestly do like that mission. I'm very much in line with that myself. I was talking to you prior to us recording that when I look at my paycheck and I'm paying 30% to the government, out of my paycheck, and I'm like, I know there's people paying even more.
Well, you are.
Yeah.
You got gasoline tax, telecom tax, capital gains tax, property tax, internet tax,
inheritance tax. If you have that,
that's true. Oh yeah.
And so that's what I really do enjoy the mission of this, because I do feel like they are trying to save customers money and show a good job in doing so. And I feel like every client that we have, that they have earned that business.
That's more money they can pay their employees and decrease cost of goods sold to their end users or their customers.
That's correct. And they do it. Every business has its quirks. Every business will always have its quirks. There's never a business that doesn't have things that you're like, this could be better. And if anyone tells you that they're not at that point, they're lying to you, right? But one thing the culture that they try to develop at Ryan, and that's something that really drew me. This is the first job that I've never really known anyone at the place, and got chosen as an applicant. And I very much was just handing out resumes, right? I was ready to get away from the bank, find a new gig, upward momentum. And I believe in the culture, researched them on Glassdoor whenever they called me. You know how that kind of goes. You send out a lot of resumes, and then someone actually bites, and you're like, okay, I've done some research prior, but you've only got so much bandwidth, right? Yeah. And so then whenever someone seriously says, hey, we want to interview you, now you're like, okay, is this a company I want to work for? And so a lot of things on Glassdoor showed, yes, this is a fantastic company. For the record, we've never been asked as this is not a hint, wink, wink. There's some businesses that are like, hey, if you put in a Glassdoor review, we'll give you $100, or
really?
They're not supposed to, but I've definitely heard of businesses doing that.
Oh yeah, like Google reviews.
Yeah, or constantly, hey, you should really put in. But I've not ever once heard of that happening at Ryan.
Nice.
Like in my personal experience, they've never sent an email. We do. They are part of the Forbes best places to work.
I noticed that, yeah.
And so we do a survey on that, but that's also, there's other people that, not just employees, that provide information into that, right? And so the glass door thing stood out to me because there was a lot of reviews and it was very highly rated. And a lot of people were saying, like, if you work at Ryan, like, you made it, right?
Yeah.
And so I was very excited to hear that. And I've seen that implemented in the culture that we work in. You know, the My Ryan is built. They basically said, why does everyone have to be in office? Why don't we? And I believe that they did this prior to COVID, and it was they turned it into a remote workforce. They have different tiers of hybrid capabilities, but so like I'm full remote, but they do call me in to come to the office for like quarterly or every 2 months in-person meetings. And we do a team breakfast, and then I catch up, and I have FaceTime, which is fantastic, and do project prioritization and setting and stuff like that, project setting and talking through that stuff. But they're very big about, like, wherever you want to work, you should be able to work.
That's awesome.
Right. There's some countries that we block.
Of course, yeah,
Right.
Of course,
but,
yeah.
but across the board, though, it's very much, I mean, and they send you the hardware, and they provide you the resources. And that's one thing I've been very critical about other companies is you can't, excuse my language, you can't half-ass remote work.
Oh, yeah.
You either fully go in on it, or you don't do it at all. But when you get in that in between, no one's on the same page.
Oh, yeah.
So some people, no one really, because that in between, it's not on a policy, it's not in a program, it's not fleshed out. So no one really knows what's allowed and what's not. And
Yep.
so my wife's company did the same thing during COVID. People loved it. So they had people come back to the office, and they said, before y'all get mad, we're going to send out a survey. We want to see who wants to work from home, who doesn't. What's the
What's the appetite? Yeah.
resounding, like 95% said we want to work from home. And so the company said, give us a few months. We're going to hire some consultation, and we're going to pull in some consultants.
Nice.
We're going to look at how we do this as a company. And then they stuck to their word, and they said, hey, here's the solution that we're doing. In the next month or next few weeks, you'll be getting a firewall, essentially. And that's their solution currently. I don't believe they do a zero trust solution at this moment.
So send them a firewall?
Yeah, they sent a firewall that just does an IPsec VPN.
There you go.
And so, which I was like, that's a solution.
It is. That's pretty unique. Yeah.
And
it works.
And they set it up, and my wife plugged it straight in, and it was working. Like, I was like, okay, like,
Plug and play.
That's solid. Yeah. And so I was like, it's not necessarily a solution I would have picked, but that doesn't mean it's a bad solution. And so it works like a champ. So she's got a constant VPN on that, and it's protected, and it's behind my firewall, and it's protected there. So
Perfect.
Defense in depth in that regard.
I was going to say, one of the biggest components of what makes the best solution, what can the end user properly use and deploy?
That's right. That's exactly right. So that's what I really enjoy about Ryan. The company culture is fantastic, in my opinion. If they're big about trying to combat burnout.
What's the week that Brent put out a couple years ago? It's a mental health week, but it has a special name at Ryan.
Oh, you're talking about Ryan Week?
Yeah.
So
that's pretty unique. I don't know any other company that does that.
It's I've yet to find another company that does. And what it is if for every country that Ryan is in, so we're global, and so for every country that we're in, if they get best place to work on the list of best place to work, it doesn't have to be number one, but just on the list, and because it's a pretty prestigious list, then they get my Ryan. They get to be they get part of Ryan Week. Is what it's called. It's just a week off. That it's usually in the summer, but they make contingencies in case a team has like major projects that are going on. They can use that, which I really like about that. They're not like, well, sorry. Like, they're like, okay, well, if your team cannot make that week, then we will discuss a contingency week, right?
Nice.
And I think we have an employee of ours that was about to use that too. They're just off, right? Now, the unfortunate part is this last time that we did Ryan Week also corresponded with the CrowdStrike event.
Oh no. So
It was the Friday
oh shit.
prior
No.
to Ryan Week.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
So there were several amazing IT, several people from our team. I think I was in Austin. I was on PTO. I was in Austin for the Classic Game Fest. We went down there on Thursday night. I got up at Friday morning around 1 to use the restroom. I opened up my phone. One of our nighttime employees said, "Hey, the group in India is saying that they think CrowdStrike is causing issues." And the running joke with anything is any EDR is always the issue, right?
Yeah.
Everyone always thinks the antivirus is the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I text back and I was like, why do they think it's this? Like everyone thinks it's always. And he sent me an article is like, Australia's down because of CrowdStrike. And I was like,
in this case, perhaps.
yeah, I was like, that might be correct. And so I made the call. It's the escalation call when it's in the middle of the night that you're like, do I call my boss or not? And I'm thinking, at this moment, I'm the most senior person on our team that has received this news, and I'm not going to be the guy that is asked, why didn't you pass this news along? So the IT group had already started a bridge, I found out later, which was good. So there was already something going on.
Excellent.
But I called my boss, Jason Salee, and said, "Hey, I'm sorry to wake you up." And of course, he was like, "No, it's okay. Like, what's going on?" So I said, "A lot."
Yeah. Y2K.
Yeah. So there's 3 other guys in the hotel room, and I didn't have anywhere to set up shop, and I wasn't going to just sit there on a bridge with them sleeping. So I grabbed all I had was my personal laptop. So I just grabbed it and put on some clothes real quick and went down to the hotel lobby, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like watching, they have news up and it's like, it's scrolling through and I'm like, yay.
Yeah. It's
And
not
so
just us.
I was up for several hours. Finally, Jason said, "Hey, get some sleep. You're on PTO." I think that was at like 4 or 5 at that point. And I texted the guys I was staying with and was like, "You're going to get this in the morning. You're going to read this when you wake up. Don't wake me up.
Yeah.
The world's falling apart. I'll meet you at breakfast."
Flights are all canceled for a while.
Yeah. So there were some awesome IT people and people from several different teams, including our own. But our IT team took on a lot of that because not fixing CrowdStrike primarily. It was and it wasn't. It was getting people into their computer because of the BitLocker thing, having to go into safe mode and it's so funny because it's like that's a necessary item.
Yeah,
that's security, but it's a pain in the butt right now.
Yeah, right. That was the headache of the day.
Yeah,
or
so
several days. So.
They would open up a bridge and people would just kind of chill there, and if you needed help, that you could call into the bridge and the quick thinking, I feel like of the IT team and leadership was send out an email or we had a notification. We use a alerting platform for these kind of instances.
Excellent.
And it was to send an alert to say, "Hey, don't open your laptop.
Yep.
Just leave it closed." And so that seemed to really cut down on the amount of people that were having issues.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, that was probably the toughest day in a couple of decades in IT. It was a good test of character. My team was up at like 1 a.m.
Were you?
Oh yeah. We were putting those fires out together. It was a fun learning experience, but
For sure, fun's a word.
Yeah. It's a word. Good. It's a good, interesting, fascinating time. But yeah, after it was all said and done, able to breathe a little bit easier. But yeah, geez Louise. Should have bought that stock when it crashed. That was ridiculous.
No kidding. That's what our CISO said too.
It's like going down to 200, like what was it, $240 per share, and is at 360 prior. Like it was.
It dropped, but then it seems that it's kind of recovered from there. So
I think they'll be fine. I mean, the stock's back, the sales are getting there. I mean, it's one of those things where it wasn't cybersecurity related, it wasn't a breach. So to me, that's why a lot of folks we understand shit happens. Like all these big tech companies, like no one's perfect. Like, yeah,
I did hear that a lot of the insurance companies though were kind of saying like, "Hey, we won't pay out for this."
That's we'll see how that court litigation goes. You're talking about Delta?
Well, the Delta one, but then I was hearing, I read a few articles that several cybersecurity insurance providers were like, it was technically not malware.
Malicious.
So
it wasn't malicious technically.
Yeah.
I mean, they might get out of it by that specific vernacular of the contracts and that's what it stipulates. Because
plus being held to the contract of CrowdStrike, because I know that majority of theirs is basically like, hey, if this fails because of a system issue, you can't necessarily sue us.
Yeah. Do you think Delta will win or CrowdStrike will win at the or they'll settle? What do you think?
I think they'll settle because
court.
I think that public opinion it was a huge thing, and now I think it's an industry thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of public, because they're like, because you had Microsoft having issues at the same time, so people are like confused on what was the issue. Like, well, Microsoft crashed. It's like, well, not technically. They did a minute ago, but not this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's also, now that it's kind of blown over, there is the consideration of like, they're a good company. Like, their tool is good.
Oh, yeah. They got some smart folks over there, too.
They really do.
Great leadership. George knows what he does. I think he's an exceptional leader.
But the testing, like, it was funny because they sent out an RCA and it was like agent updates, test. It was like rapid response, one test, production. It's like, guys, did you, I mean, I'm not even a DevSecOps. I'm not even a developer, but not a smart man, but I feel like
a little discrepancy here.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
Just a few more tests would have been nice.
Precisely.
So I now granted it's still probably going to be tough to sell any sort of management for anybody on, hey, let's buy more of their product at the moment. That wound's going to have to heal a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But I will say that primarily the bounce back, I think one of the things I've heard with the Delta thing is a lot of other companies are like, yeah, I mean, that sucked, but we bounced back like within a few days. Like even Ryan, they were on a bridge. They had a bridge every single day of the week during Ryan week, but the numbers spiked at the first and then steadily dropped off.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, I'll just deal with it when I get back. And some of them actually, they came out that there was a race condition that if you if the background process was able to boot up and pull the new file fast enough, you wouldn't even have the issue. And so I think that actually occurred with some people.
There you go.
It had been long enough, and then when they opened it up, it actually was able to quickly download and replace that file.
There you go.
So I don't think that happened a lot with ours, but I did hear about that happening with several, like, just articles. And so, but I think the public opinion, I think, has switched to being like, hey, Delta, why did it take you so long to get that back up? Yeah.
And then again, it's all public knowledge, but some articles are like, well, CrowdStrike immediately offered help to Delta, but they turned it down apparently. Like, so, I mean, we'll see how, again, I think you're right. Like most court cases, majority are settled out of court because time, money, resources, and reputation. Most people don't want to drag it through. But again, with all the terms and conditions, like, remember the iTunes contract back in our day? It's like, I can't help but think when you're working with these major, companies, it's probably similar. There has to be a caveat for that situation. And I think at the end of the day, I think most folks will eventually come to the fact that they have to accept. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect solution. I mean, people still buy the M363. I mean,
well, it's funny because people were talking about, I think the bigger issue is the fact that there was there was ability for one tool to do this. Now, the flip side of that is if, people are talking about, well, CrowdStrike has such a market share and this is a really big thing to think about. And it's like, yeah, but they don't have a monopoly.
No, it's not even close.
And people have just decided that they've proven that the product is really good. Yeah. So you cannot well, you can, it's a bad idea. You can regulate anything. But you really should not regulate. You're getting into an area of telling what people should purchase.
Like a market share? Are you talking about like a market share cap? Or something like that?
Yeah, basically. Like, because people are saying like, well, this wouldn't happen if they weren't like the main market share. And it's like, well, what is that? You're trying to say that people shouldn't purchase a good product. Yeah. Yeah, they messed up here, and I'm not going to defend them on that, right? That should have been a more robust system. Yeah. But you can't, if everyone no one's forcing people to drink Liquid Death or Coke. If people like that product,
I paid you $1 before. We mean,
yeah, right.
kidding.
And so, but no one's paying anyone to usually buy, just the masses in general, to buy a product. So it's like you can't, because that question came up of like, well, if someone not capping the market share or anything like that, but more of like, well, should we be that dependent on? It's like, well, I don't know what that means, because I get what you're saying, that this product had the ability to really cause some catastrophe by bad testing process or a bad update. Totally get that. But what's your solution to that? You can't break them up. They're not a monopoly. They're not breaking any laws.
They're not Standard Oil. They don't even have close to 50%. Like the Fortune 500, they have majority market share of that, but that's because they proved that they were the best.
Right.
And it's one of those things where I don't think in our lifetime, like even if CrowdStrike grows exponentially, you'll never be bigger than Microsoft, and government is not even trying to break them up.
That's exactly.
Like, they have a monopoly OS. Apple has a monopoly by the legal definition in the U.S. with smartphone market share. Apple has well over 50%.
Right.
Yeah, the government isn't going after them. It's like,
because technically on a monopoly, you're buying up your kind of competition.
Oh, yeah.
And like CrowdStrike's not really doing. I'm sure they're buying up different companies to add products.
I mean, they bought Humio 2 years ago, but that's adding on to their offering, not really buying a competitor.
Right, like they're not buying like Sentinel-1 or
That's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say Sentinel because I know doesn't Microsoft have a
they have Defender,
which
used to be a joke, but nowadays it's pretty good. They again, nice part of having lots of money. If you're Microsoft, they put a lot of resources and they put a lot of good folks in that project.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a small mom and pop shop, it's kind of compelling. I just tell them, you know what, for your use case, might make sense to go all in on Microsoft. They've come a long way.
People, our friends, they'll say, like, what kind of antivirus should I put on my personal computer? I'm like, just Defender.
Yeah.
You don't need to, I was like, it runs lean, does its job. I said, that anything else you throw in there, McAfee, Norton, I'm just telling you, it's a waste of money and it's a waste of resources.
Gosh, McAfee.
I've never had a good experience with antiviruses on a personal computer. And that's just me personally. Half the time I run it with Defender,
right,
and do normal best practice security. Mm-hmm. And I mean, don't go to crappy sites.
Yeah,
you won't usually catch crappy stuff. Don't click on phishing links.
That's true.
There's a lot of that stuff that people are like. I try to educate people with like. It's people can't like unless it's a drive-by download. Mm. The chances of someone just throwing something on your computer without your system seeing it these days is very like it's not this. We're not in the Wild West as much as we used to be.
Oh, yeah. It's not the 90s,
right?
And hopefully people aren't still using LimeWire.
Oh gosh, right. So it's, but I really enjoy working at Ryan. There's a lot of vision. There's a lot of goals. Our CISO and Jason, my boss. And everyone on the team seems to have a general idea of what the requirements are, what the positions, especially in the leadership stance of what my position, what our position should be, and what is required to get to the next step, as opposed to just being like throwing out a title. Mm. And that was extremely helpful to me to hear, like talking with Mr. Moats of him saying, I want to take you from an engineer and you're kind of a pawn in this regard, not in an offensive way, but like a pawn on a chessboard.
Right, on team.
And I want to grow you to being the queen, piece and the ability to move you in more than just one direction. And then I want to get you from there and, to the next title and the same process. Right. And I like that because that's very much a building of those skills. There's, back to that conversation about calling someone for a meeting, or just a quick call. Like I've had many times, Jason and I talk consistently, text or Teams or whatnot. But what's cool is that, every person that's in leadership on our team. So I'm part of the threat management team, threat response team, if you will, the CIRT. And then the GRC side, even their manager, I can reach out to any of them and say, hey, I need some clarification. And there's never like pencil me in or anything, like talk to my secretary or anything like that. It's very much, there's been many times that Jim, I'm not understanding something that Jim's requesting. So I'll just say, hey, can I call you real quick? And he'll be like, yeah. And so,
nice.
You have a CISO, and that is a chief, a C-level position that is very approachable in that. And I very much appreciate that. That's not always happening with different companies. And so I really do appreciate when C-levels are approachable in that respect, because they are busy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't doubt that in my mind. I don't call up Brent, the owner of the company, to just chat.
Yeah.
And I've honestly never talked to him like directly in that regard, but I do know that he, for certain, for his team, he's usually available to clarify and discuss. And Brent's a pretty vocal guy, anyways.
Yeah.
And that's why the company is where it's at. So, but that seems to filter down across the entire organization, which I really appreciate.
It's also one of those personal development goals and actually a roadmap for success. Because I think one of the worst things, and it's kind of cliche, but people say, you don't quit your job, you quit your manager.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where a lot of companies, like, they really don't. They say they want you to be successful, but they don't give you like a roadmap and like the tools necessary to grow personally and professionally to get to those next levels.
That's it. Or they tell you like, you're not going to go any further than this.
Oh yeah.
So then you're like, why do I put in the effort? Whereas here, I'm getting pieces of architecture review, and the next position for me would be security architecture or security architect. I was security architect at the bank. But what I realized is they didn't really know their titles, and that's kind of the top that you could put, the title you could put at the top without giving a manager title, which would incur more money. So whenever I took the position at Ryan, I took a title decrease, but come to find out, like, that's really where my skills were.
Yeah.
And I knew that to get to the security architect, I made it clear to Mr. Motes and then Jason that, whatever they said, hey, this is what it would require, that I had no problem just learning that information. And because if I know that there's the capability to move into that direction to the next stop or whatever, then I'll fill in the experience. You say, hey, I need you to be good at this stuff. Okay, then I'll dive in on that, and I'll be better at that. And I don't necessarily expect that you promote me immediately, but I do expect to show you that, hey, I can handle this, or if I can't, I'm going to talk to you about what do we need to do, and they allow that room, which I like that a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And having a title, and this is something I try to tell people that are getting into the industry, is like, just know that a lot of businesses don't know what those titles are because they don't have anyone on their team that knows what those titles are.
Yeah.
And if you're asking a system analyst or security analyst to do security architecture work, that doesn't make sense. That security analyst is usually an entry-level position. It's the person getting into security. They're going to be looking at a lot of security tickets, a lot of alerts, a lot of responses, and then on to security engineer if you want that position, then onward to security architecture if you want that position, if that position exists. But a lot of people, like, you'll see people out saying like, security analyst, $50,000 a year, must have blah, 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 CISP preferred. Like, CISP preferred, like that, like, who's making these job recs? You don't even know what that is. That's a manager degree or a manager certificate.
Is that an AI job post or something?
Yeah, it's like, I'll talk to people like, man, I'm trying to get my CISP, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, are you trying to be a manager? And they'll say, well, no, but it's a prestigious certificate. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. But like, if you're a security analyst or you're a pen tester, it doesn't really make sense to get a CISP.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, it's a great thing. But if you're not going to go into policy or management, I mean, then go for like CISA plus or something a lot
more
less
correlated to your role.
Yeah, but I've seen that in the industry as a whole, that people, certificate providers are good at marketers.
Oh yeah, they are.
And so they'll make they'll make people think like you have to have this role or this cert. And it's like, well, you don't really. It doesn't make sense to put all your money and effort into this thing.
Especially when they can cost so much too.
They
add up. I know some folks who spend a car's worth on just certs.
And the question I always ask is, what does it gain you? If it does gain you more information and expertise in that field, then cool. But like the CISP I tell people, we always talk about it's a 2 inches 2 inches deep, 100 miles wide. So you're having to know everything. Where if you would spend time in the industry and get some other certs, smaller certs, you'll probably walk into the test without. You probably have to study a little bit, but it's not going to be a surprise to you.
You'll be more confident too.
Yeah, and you'll be doing that stuff. And that's, Mr. Motes was big about that, telling me, because I was looking at the CISP, I was studying for it prior to getting hired. And he said, unless you're going to be a manager for us, he's like, then that's my job. He said, unless you're going to be a CISO at this moment, which I don't think you are, you're not gunning for that at the moment, then that's not going to help you here. I said, okay. And he said, but I would like, my goal is to get you the experience you need so that you can, when you are ready to move into that position, walk in and take that test. And I said, cool. That's less studying I have to do for this.
There you go.
And I'd rather study what you want me to study. So,
yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what do you like to do outside the office?
Video games and board games and cycling.
There you go. What's your favorite console?
Man, the Xbox 360 has a special place in my heart. It really does.
Good.
Yeah. It's my first console was a PlayStation. That my dad, he worked for Raytheon at the time. He was traveling, and I think it was either Hawaii or Puerto. I know it was Puerto Rico's when I first played it, but I can't remember if he picked it up at Hawaii or Puerto Rico. And he had it. It had just, I think, honestly, looking back, I think it'd come out like a year or two before, maybe that same year. And I was playing on it, Crash Bandicoot, some Tomb Raider. It was just I think I was like 8 at the time, 7, and he's like, yeah, this is ours now, and so played the PlayStation 1 a lot.
Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah. And I can't remember really what I played a lot on that PlayStation 1, but I do remember that when the PlayStation 2 was announced, I went down to EB Games.
Oh, yeah.
At the time.
I remember that.
And, yeah, geez, I feel old talking about this.
Good old days.
Saved up my money, bought a PS2 and 2 games. I think there was a third. I can't remember if there was a third. I think it may have been a football game. But I remember Star Wars Starfighter and Armored Core.
I remember that one.
And I didn't have enough for a save card.
Yeah, 8 megabytes.
Probably. And it's fun, yeah, because I'd have to play Star Wars Starfighter like the same levels over and over until I had enough money to buy a memory card. And so I was thinking about this the other day. I found out the other day that I never realized this. The towers on the PlayStation 2 startup screen were representative of how much save data you had. I never knew that.
Really?
So the more save data you have, the more towers there were. I for the life of me never knew that, and I felt like I was like, how did I not know that?
I have to check that out after the show. Turn mine on.
Yeah, and they were showing a video. Is like, this is like with no memory, and it was just a few towers, and this is like with like a crap ton of save data, and it was just nothing but towers across the screen.
I remember the cute little icons per game when you would save 2 memory cards.
I loved that so much because then they would they'd have static ones, but then they started making like small GIFs of them and movable. So
and some would do special things if you try to delete it too.
Yeah,
I just heard about that on the Facebook yesterday.
And then I haven't played Metal Gear Solid. That's the one game I need to go through, a series I'd like to go through, but the cool stuff that they would do, like they would, if you had save game data from a previous one, it would be like, it would make references to that, so several different games would kind of do that sometimes. I forgot what the other one, there was another one that I played. I can't for the life of me think of the game, but it would check out if it was it was the number 2 it was a sequel to a game.
Medal of Honor?
No, it was a goofy game, and I had to remember what it was, but it would make fun of you for crap that you did in the other one.
Last guess, Ratchet and Clank?
It may have been, because I keep thinking Jak and Daxter.
Oh yeah, those look so familiar to each other. It's hard to tell them apart.
But it may have been Ratchet and Clank, because I keep thinking in that area. But there was a game. It was something like that would make fun of like save data that you had, or it'd be like, I saw that you played this. Why didn't you go this area? Because it would know like what you'd accessed and stuff like that. So
that's pretty cool.
So that PlayStation 2, and then my dad, we bought an Xbox because I never had an N64. I didn't ever have that, but I did get an Xbox because friends and I were playing Halo. I really want to play Halo.
Oh yeah.
And we do LAN parties and
hell yeah.
And then my dad, we bought it off of eBay, and then like the next 2 or 3 months they announced the 360. So my dad ended up getting me that, and I loved that thing. It was fantastic.
I joke when you say that you love 360 because I loved it until it broke. It's
Oh,
the red ring of death. Yeah.
I never ran into that issue.
What?
Yeah, I never ended up.
Oh, man. You got lucky.
I think what I did do though, if I remember right, I never had it happen, but they announced the recall or whatever, so you could send it in, and I think I did that, and they fixed it so that I never ran into the issue.
Gotta get Steve Ballmer credit, CEO of Microsoft. Do you hear about the story?
Nuh-uh.
Like, so they're doing all the analytics. So like, why such a high unusual failure rate? Well, it's because of compliance with a special EPA-friendly goop in Europe. They use that same goop on GPU globally. That's why it was breaking prematurely. It was apparently a new formula. So all the Xbox team, all right, we're going to test these. It kept failing. They're failing at like 50% plus failure rate, and they're just throwing in a big warehouse. So like, all right, throw it in there, throw it in there. They finally figure out, what's the issue? They go, what's it going to cost to fix this? And the Xbox team look at each other, go, crunch the numbers there. You have to, have it free to mail in. So you got to deal with that, all logistics, replacement parts. Be about $1 billion. So they go into the CEOs of Microsoft's office and go, hey, Steve, need a little help. He's like, how much you need? $1 billion. Like, barely any hesitation. Steve goes, all right, do it. It's like, holy shit. $1 billion to save it. It was worth it. I mean, they made their money back eventually, but.
Yeah, it's funny because it became a meme.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't a killer, right? Yeah. It didn't kill the line of that. And, it's funny because at Classic Game Fest this last year, or this year, I decided to pull the trigger on buying a PS3 and a 360. Nice. And I had both growing up, PS3 in college and 360 in high school. Mm-hmm. And I booted up the 360, and there's all my avatar and stuff, and I did not realize that they were about to close the store. And so I was just going through like all my past purchases is almost nostalgia, right? I'm like, and it's showing stuff like from when I was in middle school, and from on the Xbox Live store. And I'm like, heck yeah. So I'm like downloading this stuff to the thing. And then about a week later, I have New York Times, and it popped up and it's like, Xbox has officially closed the Xbox store, right? And I was like, what? I was like, I didn't realize they were doing that. So I got on the 360, and it's that blade or that section is gone. And I was like, my heart.
That's bull crap. Yeah. That's what I hate about downloads in the cloud sometimes. It's like,
I was like, what an end of an era. Yeah. Like that was a thing, and
I mean, that was the best. I don't know. To me, that was one of the best consoles because, high school, then little college, you got Modern Warfare 2 revolutionized online gaming.
Oh, gosh.
It was so much fun. And it was the Wild West. You can do whatever you want. Like, it was.
I remember
unparalleled
that.
Smack talk.
So I was a SOCOM fan.
Oh, yeah.
And played a lot of SOCOM 3 and 4. In fact, I got the PlayStation 2 hard drive expansion that also had a modem attachment to it, so I played online.
Yeah, bolted in the back of that thing.
Yep. Yeah. And you didn't have to have a memory card anymore because it's a hard drive. And so then 360 came. Xbox Live was already a thing with Xbox, and then it was just made even more with the 360. And so I remember vividly when we got to college, I worked at GameStop, and a friend of mine, they came in when Modern Warfare 2 released, and I actually hadn't played the series much. I'd played other games, and but I used my employee discount to get them Modern Warfare 2.
Nice.
And I was ticked off because my friend kept playing in my dorm room, and I was like, basically like, get your own, and I'd go to work and I'd come in and they'd be on my TV, and I kind of really wanted just to be able to come home and come to the dorm and to play my stuff. And so I was just pissed off, and I walked in and I was like, go and work, play on your own thing. I'm tired of this. And I remember him saying like, wait, hold on, I'm almost done. And then I just like clicked the button. So I was so mad. And then later on I realized like he was legitimately at the last part of the game.
Oh no.
Yeah, like in the on number 2 when you're in the rapids and stuff like that. Like he was like minutes away from. And so I later was like, I'm really sorry about that, man. I was just ticked off about other that and other stuff. And so, but yeah, I like right now I'm playing back through Fallout, or I'm not back through. I haven't ever played it. Fallout New Vegas. I've always played 3 and 4, but I never played New Vegas.
3 is my favorite. That's what I had.
That's the one I started on.
I have it.
And man, I'm going back to a lot of those older games because they're just really enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
I just traded a guy. I had a Asus M15 gaming laptop and put it up for sale. And he said, "Hey, do you want to trade this for the Asus ROG Ally handheld?" And I was like, "You know what? I'll try that." Mine's a few years older than that, but or the laptop was, but he was looking for a gaming laptop.
There you go.
And everything I read, it's a solid handheld. And so I was like, yeah, sounds good. And so we did a swap, and I played that this weekend. It was pretty cool. So
there you go. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then what about the nonprofit or the cybersecurity club you run in Abilene?
Yeah, so that's a pretty cool thing. We just a guy moved to Abilene named Antonio, and he wanted to he noticed that there wasn't any group for cybersecurity professionals or whatnot in the area, so he started a group called PWN Abilene, PWN Abilene. And we have a Discord server, and I have some stuff on LinkedIn about it. We haven't really fleshed out a Facebook at this moment. But it's meant to not necessarily be a hacker group or anything, but it is meant to help bring people in the big country area to provide them with a space to discuss. And we have a monthly meetup that we do last Saturday of every month. This week, or these last 2 months, we've adjusted it for the holidays, but it's normally the fourth Monday of every month. And me and a friend of mine showed up. The friend of mine invited me, and it was just the 3 of us. And I said, "Hey, do you need help with this at all?" And he's like, "I absolutely need help with this." And so, it was something that I really had thought about putting together. I just never took the step to. And he beat me to the punch on that, which is awesome. And so we're just trying to get more people in so that it's less of a pure networking event or item, and more of a skills honing place to discuss and talk event. So, which is cool because I came. Several of us that are part of that group just got back from B-Sides Austin. That's where I was Thursday and Friday of this week, and they had some good presentations. It's back and forth. Some of them were meh. But they had a CTF tournament, and so that was the first time any of us had done that. We do Hack the Box. I'm going through the academy.
Nice.
And but I'd never done like a public CTF event, and it was put on by Meta CTF, and they killed it. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun to do that, and so we ended up. Our group came in 7th out of 42.
Nice.
So we were really excited about that. There were several problems that we did that pushed our skills. One of those is like a buffer overrun or buffer overflow item, and it's not something I usually memory addressing and stuff like that can be just rocket science to me, or a whole nother language. But it was fun to challenge myself to research that and see how that works, and so had a lot of fun with that.
That's pretty cool.
And that's what we're trying to build out with this group as well.
What's the best way to find them? Do you have a website we can point people out to?
I don't have a website yet, but but I do have a Discord invite, and I can provide that. It's mainly for those in the Abilene area. So if you're from Abilene and you're listening to this, and you are either interested in cybersecurity, either professionally or even recreationally, if you are trying to get into the cybersecurity industry, maybe you're an IT professional, you're trying to get over there, or you're an industry veteran, we'd love to have you, have a conversation, and just introduce you to the group. And if you're able to make a meeting, we'd love it. So
awesome. Sounds good. Well, appreciate you coming. Have to have you on again.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much,
Appreciate
Joshua.
it,
Thanks everyone for taking the time to tune in. Don't forget, we're also on Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, our favorite platforms. Don't forget to click that like and subscribe button. Also, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, to anyone and everyone. Just stay safe. You all have a great day. Topping Talks.